We use special equations called formulas that describe the math relationship between things that we can measure. We use special equations called formulas that describe the math between things that we can measure.
Good. Formulas describe math relationships between things that we can measure.
Units are needed in order to give meaning to measurement numbers. A unit is a fixed amount of something that you want to measure. A unit is an amount of something that you want to measure.
Very nice. A unit is a fixed amount of something that you want to measure.
For example, if you say that something measures 3, the number has no meaning unless you use units with the number. Do you mean 3 feet, 3 yards, 3 inches, 3 miles, or 3 kilometers? Units give measurements meaning. Blank give meaning to measurements.
Nicely done. Units give meaning to measurements.
We generally use symbols that are shortened words, called abbreviations, to represent units in order to save space and time in calculation. Some examples of units of length are the following. 1 inch is abbreviated IN period. 1 foot, FT period. 1 yard, YD period. And 1 mile, MI period. Each of the abbreviations means one of the unit. Left-click and drag the unit symbol on the right side to the matching unit on the left side.
You're right. Nice job.
Unit symbols are like the variable symbols x and y in algebra. They follow the same rules as variables because they are symbols that represent numbers just like variables. The difference is that the value that a unit symbol represents never varies. It remains constant, a fixed amount. Unit symbols follow the same as variables because they are symbols that represent numbers just like variables do.
Good. Unit symbols follow the same rules as variables.
The important point is we can calculate with units in the same way that we calculate with variables. We can calculate with in the same way that we calculate with variables.
Nice. We can calculate with units in the same way that we calculate with variables.
For example, just as we say that 2x plus 3x equals 5x, we can say that 2 inches plus 3 inches equals 5 inches. 2 inches plus 3 inches equals which of the following?
Nicely done. B is the correct answer.
Just as we say 7x minus 3x equals 4x, we can say that 7 inches minus 3 inches equals 4 inches. 7 inches minus 3 inches equals which of the following?
Correct. 4 inches is the answer.
Just as we say that 4x times 2x equals 8x squared. Remember, x times x is x squared, or x to the second power. We can say that 4 inches times 2 inches equals 8 inches to the second power. Remember, inches times inches becomes inches to the second power, or square inches. 4 inches times 2 inches equals which of the following?
Good. 4 inches times 2 inches equals 8 inches squared.
Another example. Just as we say 2x squared times 5x is equal to 10x to the third, remember, x squared times x is x to the third power, and 2 times 5 is 10. Just as we can show that with our rules, we can say that 2 inches squared times 5 inches is equal to 10 inches to the third power, or 10 inches cubed, or 10 cubic inches. Remember, inches squared times inches is inches to the third power. 2 inches squared times 5 inches equals which of the following?
Good. The answer is C, 10 cubic inches.
Another example. Using our rules, remember, we can say that 12x to the third divided by 2x squared is 6x. We divide the numbers and we subtract our exponents here. Just as we can say that, we can say that 12 cubic inches, or 12 inches to the third power, over or divided by 2 inches to the second power, or 2 square inches, is equal to 6 inches. 12 inches to the third over 2 inches squared is equal to which of the following?
Good. Your answer is C, 6 inches.
Another example. Just as we say 10x over 2y can be simplified to be 5x over y, we can say that 10 miles over 2 hours can be simplified to be 5 miles over an hour, over 1 hour, or 5 miles per hour is how this also can be expressed. 10 miles over 2 hours equals which of the following?
Very nice. Your answer choice is A, 5 miles per hour.
Just as we say 5x over y can be rewritten as 5 times x over y, we can rewrite 5 miles per or over an hour can be rewritten as 5 miles per hour. 5 miles per hour can be rewritten as which of the following?
Very nice. The answer choice is B, 5 miles per hour.
It is important to remember that you cannot add or subtract expressions with different units, but you can multiply or divide expressions with different units. In algebra, when we have different variables, 2x and 3y, we cannot add these two terms together to be 5 of anything. They are not like terms. In the same way, when you have different units, say miles and hours, and you have 2 miles plus 3 hours, you cannot add those two expressions together to be 5 of anything. But in algebra, remember, if we have 2x times 3y, we can say that that is 6xy using our rules. We can multiply the number factors together. And in the same way, if we have 2 miles times 3 hours, we can multiply the number factors together to be 6, and the units can be indicated as multiplying together as mile hours. So we can say 2 miles times 3 hours equals 6 mile hours. 2 miles plus 3 hours equals which of the following?
Very nice. You cannot add when the units are different. Your answer choice is B.
2 miles times 3 hours equals which of the following?
Yes, you can multiply with different units, so our answer choice is A.
Let's look at our first example of a formula, the perimeter formula for a rectangle. Perimeter means the distance around the outside of a figure. With a rectangle, the shorter side is called the width. The longer sides of a rectangle are called the length. The opposite sides of rectangles have the same measures. The perimeter, or distance around the outside of a rectangle, is calculated by multiplying 2 times the width plus 2 times the length. And we represent that with the following formula. P stands for the perimeter, W stands for the width, and L stands for the length. The perimeter equals 2 times the width plus 2 times the length. The formula for the perimeter, the distance around the outside of a rectangle, is which of the following statements?
Very nice. C is the correct formula.
Let's look at an example of calculating with our formula. We have a rectangle with a width of 5 inches and a length of 10 inches. We want to use our formula to calculate the perimeter, the distance around the outside of this figure. To do a formula calculation, we replace the letters in our formula, the variables in the formula, with the values that they represent. The width is 5 inches. The length is 10 inches. To do our formula calculation, we rewrite the formula, replacing the letters by the values that they represent. Again, we replace the width, the W, by 5 inches, its current value. And we replace the L variable with 10 inches, its value in this problem. If the perimeter equals 2 times the width plus 2 times the length, and the width equals 5 inches, and the length equals 10 inches, then the perimeter is equal to which of the following?
Yes, the correct replacements are answer choice A. Good.
Now we have a statement that we can calculate to find the value of the perimeter, to find the value of P. 2 times 5 inches is going to be equal to 10 inches. Plus 2 times 10 inches will be 20 inches. If the perimeter equals 2 times 5 inches plus 2 times 10 inches, then the next step in the calculation process for the perimeter would be which of the following?
Very good. The perimeter is equal to 10 inches plus 20 inches. Answer choice B.
Again, we can go further. 10 inches plus 20 inches add together to be 30 inches. The perimeter, the distance around the outside of our rectangle, is 30 inches. If the perimeter equals 10 inches plus 20 inches, then the perimeter equals which of the following?
Very nice. Our final answer is C.
In this problem, we're going to solve for part of the rectangle. In this situation, we know that the width is equal to 10 feet for our rectangle, and the perimeter of the rectangle is equal to 50 feet. We want to solve for the length of the rectangle. In order to find something or solve for something in algebra, we need a statement that talks about what we know and what we are looking for. The perimeter formula talks about what we know and what we're looking for. We know about the perimeter and we know about the width, and we're looking for the length. So our first step in this problem is going to be to replace the variables whose values we know with those values. So our first step is to replace the P in our formula by 50 feet, its value. And we do the same thing for the W. We replace the W in our formula with the value 10 feet. If the perimeter equals 2 times the width plus 2 times the length, and the perimeter equals 50 feet, and the width equals 10 feet, then the next step in the solution process is what?
Good.
Now we have an equation with simply one unknown, the length, and we can solve for that unknown. We can multiply 2 times the 10 feet, again to be 20 feet. So we have 50 feet equals 20 feet plus 2 times L. If we are at this point in the solution process, then the next step in the solution process is which of the following?
Very nice. The next step is B.
We want to get L, the length, all alone. Before we can get L all alone, we're going to get the expression 2L all alone. And we see that 20 feet is being added to the 2L. So it makes sense that we're going to subtract off 20 feet from the right-hand side of the equation in order to start to get 2L all alone. Remember, our rules say that we have to do the same thing to the left-hand side of the equation and subtract 20 feet there. If 50 feet equals 20 feet plus 2L, then the next step in the solution process is which of the following?
Good. Our next step is A.
Now we know from our rules, and we can show very easily, that this 20 feet will subtract from this 20 feet to be 0. And 0 plus the 2L will simply be the 2L. And the 50 feet minus the 20 feet will be 30 feet. So we have the equation at this point. If we are at this point in the simplification process, then the next step in the solution process is which of the following?
Good. The correct answer is B.
We know from our simple equations that if 2 is multiplying times L, we need to divide by 2, that side of the equation by 2, in order to get L all alone. So we're going to divide the right-hand side of the equation by 2, and remember, our rules say that we must divide the left-hand side of the equation by 2 as well. If 30 feet equals 2L, then the next step in the solution process is which of the following?
Our next step is to divide both sides by 2. Very nice.
Now we can simplify further. The 30 over the 2 will be 15 feet. The 2L over 2 will simply be L. We can use our symmetric property of equality to rewrite this with the L first, if you would like. So 15 feet equals L can be rewritten as L equals 15 feet. And we have solved for our length of our rectangle. It is 15 feet. If 30 feet over 2 equals 2L over 2, then the next step in the solution process is which of the following?
Very nice. 15 feet equals L.
Let's look at another formula for a rectangle, the area formula. Area means the amount of flat surface of a figure. The area of a rectangle is the amount of flat surface inside of the rectangle. And we represent it with the letter A. We calculate the area by multiplying the width times the length. Gives us our area. And we express this with a formula in the following way. Capital A for area equals width times length. This is our area formula for a rectangle. The formula for the area, the amount of flat surface, of a rectangle is which of the following?
Very good. The correct formula is answer choice C.
Let's look at a specific calculation using our area formula. We have a rectangle here with a width of 4 inches and a length of 8 inches. We want to calculate the area of this rectangle, and we can use our formula to do that. Remember, the area is calculated or is equal to the width times the length. So to calculate the area of this rectangle, we simply replace the variables by the values that they represent at this time. The width is equal to 4 inches, so we replace W in our formula by 4 inches. Remember to include your units. The length is equal to 8 inches, so we replace the length in our formula by 8 inches. If the area equals the width times the length, and the width equals 4 inches, and the length equals 8 inches, then which of the following is the first step in the calculation process?
The correct replacements are answer choice B. Nicely done.
Now we go further with our calculation. The 4 will multiply times the 8 to give us 32. But remember, inches times inch will be inches squared, or square inches. So when we simplify further here, our area will be equal to 4 times the 8 is 32, but inch times inch is equal to square inches, or inches to the second power. Another way that this can be expressed is the area is equal to 32 square inches. And we have calculated the area of our rectangle. It is 32 square inches. If the area equals 4 inches times 8 inches, then the area calculates to be which of the following?
Nice. Our answer is 32 square inches.
This time, we want to find the width of the rectangle. We know that the length is 8 feet, and we know that the area is equal to 40 square feet. In order to solve for something in algebra, you need to have or come up with a statement that talks about what you know and what you're looking for. Our area formula talks about what we know, our area and our length, and it also talks about what we are looking for. So we can use it to solve for the width. To do this, we replace our variables by the values that we know they represent at this point in time. The area represents 40 feet squared, or 40 square feet. So we replace the A by 40 square feet. The length is 8 feet. So we replace L by 8 feet. If the area of the rectangle equals the width times the length, and the area of the rectangle is 40 square feet, and the length is 8 feet, then we can begin to solve for the width of the rectangle with which of the following statements?
The correct replacements are answer choice C. Very nice.
Now we have one equation in one unknown, and we can solve it for that unknown, the W. Before we do, quite often when you're working with units, it helps to use parentheses to separate all of the factors in the problem, all the things multiplying together, into single units so that you can see your calculations more clearly. So we're going to rewrite this equation as 40 times feet squared equals W times 8 times feet. And we're using parentheses just to make our calculations with units clearer. So since 8 feet is multiplying times W, we're going to divide that side of the equation by 8 feet. And we need to do the same thing to the other side of the equation. So rewriting, we're dividing the right-hand side of the equation by 8 feet, and we have to divide the left-hand side of the equation by 8 feet as well. If 40 square feet equals W times 8 feet, then the next step in the solution process is which of the following?
Very nice. The next step is to divide both sides by 8 feet.
We can simplify further. Notice we have 8 over 8 here. Anything over itself is 1. Anything divided by itself is 1. And 1 foot unit over 1 foot unit. Since they are the same thing, they divide into each other to be 1. So we can express that with these markings. This is sometimes called canceling. It's simply expressing the idea that you're dividing the top and bottom of the fraction by the same number. 8 over 8 is 1, and feet over feet will be 1. In effect, they cancel themselves out of the problem. In any case, what's left behind is our width, our W, all alone. And we can go further also with our calculation on this side. 40 over 8 will divide to be 5. And foot squared over foot will simply be foot. Just like x squared over x is x. So we can rewrite this expression as W equals 40 divided by 8 is 5, and foot squared over foot. The units will calculate to be simply 1 foot. So we have 5 feet equal W, and of course you can use your symmetric property of equality to rewrite this as W equals 5 feet. And we have found the width of our rectangle is 5 feet. If we are at this step in the solution process, the next step would be which of the following?
Good, our answer choice is B. 5 feet equals W, or W equals 5 feet.
Let's look at another important formula, the distance formula for a moving object. In the distance formula, rate means the speed of the moving object. When an object is in motion, it travels a certain distance in a certain time. D is going to represent the distance that our object has traveled, and T will represent the time that it took it to travel that distance. The relationship between distance, rate, and time is that the distance an object travels is equal to the rate or speed that it travels at times the time. It's represented by this formula. D, the distance, equals R, the rate or speed, times T, the time. The distance D that a moving object travels in a given time T at a given rate R is calculated with which of the following formulas?
Correct. Answer choice C. Distance equals rate times time.
Let's look at a specific problem or calculation with the distance formula. We have an object whose speed or rate is 25 miles per hour. This object travels for a certain length of time. We want to use our distance formula to calculate the distance that the object traveled. The distance equals rate times time. We replace the variables in our formula with the values that we know in the problem. We know that the rate is equal to 25 miles per hour and the time is equal to 3 hours. At this point, we can use our formula to calculate our distance. We know our rate and we know our time, so we replace in the formula our variables by the values that they represent in this problem. So we replace R by 25 miles per hour, and we replace T by 3 hours. If the distance equals the rate times the time, and the rate is 25 miles per hour, and the time is equal to 3 hours, then we can calculate the distance with which of the following statements?
Correct.
Now our formula tells us that the distance is equal to the result of this calculation. To make the calculation easier to understand and see, We're breaking all of the factors up in the expressions and emphasizing them with parentheses. We see that we have hour over hour here. Anything over itself will be 1. And we see that 3 can multiply times 25 to be 75. And we will have a mile unit left. So the result of this calculation is, when we cancel our hours, the 3 times the 25 multiplied to be 75, and we still have our mile unit. Our distance in this problem that the object traveled at the rate of 25 miles per hour is 75 miles. If we are at this step in the solution, then the next step in the solution process is which of the following?
Very nice. Our final answer is C, distance equals 75 miles.
Let's look at another problem. This time, we want to find the rate of the moving object when we know the time and we know the distance that the object has traveled. Again, we're going to use our distance formula because the distance formula talks about what we know and what we are looking for. We know the distance, we know d, and we know t, the time. We need to find r, the rate. Our d is equal to 100 miles, our distance. Our time is equal to 2 hours. We need to use this information to find r, the rate. Remember, when we are solving for something in algebra, we need to find a statement that talks about what we know and what we are looking for. And in this problem, the distance formula does that. It talks about the distance that we know and the time that we know. And it talks about the rate that we are looking for. So our first step in this problem is to replace the variables by the values that they represent at this time. So we replace d by its value, 100 miles. Remember, we include the units. And we replace t by its value, 2 hours. If the distance equals the rate times the time, and the distance is equal to 100 miles, and the time is equal to 2 hours, then which of the following is a correct statement?
Good. The correct replacements are answer choice A.
Now we have an equation with one variable, and we can solve that equation. Before we do, since we have units in our equation, it's often helpful to rewrite the equation with the units in factor form using parentheses. This helps keep your calculation clear on your units. So we're going to rewrite this equation as 100 times the mile unit equals the rate times 2 times the hour unit. Now we can go on to solve the equation. We see that we have the expression 2 times the hour unit multiplying times our variable that we want to solve for, the rate. So we're going to divide this side of the equation by 2 hours, or 2 times the hour unit, in order to get the r all alone. And remember, we have to do the same thing to this side of the equation. So our next step will be we're going to divide the right-hand side of the equation by 2 times the hour unit, because we know that we'll eventually get the R all alone. But remember, we have to do the same thing to the other side of the equation. If we are at this point in the solution, then the next step in the solution process is which of the following statements?
Correct. We divide both sides by 2 hours. Our answer choice is C.
Now going further with our simplification of the equation, we see that the 2 hours dividing into the 2 hours will cancel out. Anything over itself will be 1. We can show that that will be the effect in this calculation using our rules. And we know that on the left-hand side, 100 over 2 will simplify or reduce to be 50. The mile unit over the hour unit is like X over Y. We have to leave it indicated because the units are different. We cannot do any calculation with them. All right, we can rewrite the equation by doing the following. We're going to cancel out the 2's because 2 over 2 in effect makes 1 in the problem. And the same thing with the hour units. Anything over itself is 1. And when we rewrite the equation, we will have 50 miles per hour equals simply R. And we can rewrite this as R equals 50 miles per hour. Using our symmetric property, we can rewrite this with the R first, the rate first. And we have solved our problem. The rate in this problem, the speed, was 50 miles per hour. If we are at this point in our solution, then the next step in the solution process is which of the following?
Good. Our answer is A. 50 miles per hour equals R, or R equals 50 miles per hour.
Basic Algebra Concepts is an individualized, programmed learning approach to e-learning based on the work of B.F. Skinner, Norman Crowder, and others with early learning machines. Sample videos on the course content and shop pages demonstrate our approach. Some of our strategies focusing on the young learner are: third grade reading level. Writing is encouraged but not required. We've designed the simplest learning steps possible. There is a strong emphasis on pattern recognition. Each slide contains clear animation and narration. There are frequent low-level assessments designed to reinforce and motivate. The student is provided with immediate feedback on their responses, as well as positive reinforcement for correct responses. There is an extremely high level of interaction between the student and the program. The learning is self-paced. There is no homework, worksheets, or tests. There are assessments at every step of the learning process, designed for success and motivation. you.